I'm DV LeBron with the Ellis Talker Show. Today I have a very special guest, a first for the show, I believe, Mr. Paul Perry, County Commissioner of Ellis County, Precinct 3. How are you, sir?
Doing very well. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, thank you. I've known you for a few years now, and it is an honor to have you on. I know how much you love your community. So I wanted you to, as far as I know, you're getting ready to run, and you're announcing that you want to run for re-election. I'll let you tell the people that. But there's some people that are new. So I wanted you to have an opportunity to go ahead and talk to them so they could see you. So I was hoping if you could give them your bio, I would appreciate it.
Sure. I was raised in Ellis County mostly. We moved here out of Dallas County in 1964. I remember going by the Midlothian population sign, and it said population 1,200. We lived 3.5 miles south of the Midlothian city limits in those days. Now it's the middle of Midlothian, and it's a McMansion farm. I live in the rural area of my precinct, which is between Milford and Italy. It's very similar to how I grew up. We have a little livestock and live a kind of a rural lifestyle, and I enjoy that.
Do you like what is your was or is your profession? I didn't know if you were retired yet.
No, I spent this year I guess it'll be 41 years in the financial industry and the investment industry. My business is really not what it once was, of course, because I spend most of my time being county commissioner. I still help some retired folks with accounts, and occasionally, they'll send me a referral or whatever, but I don't actively market anymore. And most of that work I do at night, and I'm making investment decisions for myself. So I'm making investment decisions for others along with myself. I just modify things a little bit and run a business.
This is the part where you tell people your intent. Let them know that whether you're running or not for re-election, and kind of give them a quick spiel, and we'll move on.
Well, in 2012, I had some people approach me about running against the incumbent, and we were fortunate to prevail after a runoff election, and I was sworn in 2013. So I'm serving in the 11th year of my service as county commissioner. I had served as a justice of the peace from 95 to 99, and it's like the old movie line. I'd always said I was out, and then they kind of drug me back in, which I'm flattered. At the same time, being a county commissioner in this growing county is truthfully a full-time job, and that's how I treat it. I start early, and sometimes I finish later than I intend, and I do what I like to call quality control on Saturdays. I go out and review things that we have done on the roads and the bridges and those kind of things, and I actually enjoy that. I like driving my precinct. I like the people in my precinct, and I think that I am the proper person to serve in this precinct right now. It's very dynamic. I think that I manifest the qualities of a real conservative, one who believes in natural law and the Constitution, but also a person who has some experience in county government and management now. And I bring some things to the table that I think benefit the Commissioners Court as a whole.
Well, thank you so much for wanting to serve your community again, and continue to serve your community, Mr. Perry, because you're right. It is a full-time job. From what I've seen and being able to interview people that are in office throughout the county, I mean, you got your job and then your second job, because there's a lot going on, especially with a dynamic city, dynamic county, so much growing, people coming. There's always something to do. So thank you so much for wanting to continue your work that you've done in the county, Mr. Perry. So I wanted to get into fundamentals, okay, because now you're running again, and I don't know if anybody's running against you, but, people want to know where you stand that may not know you personally.
The U.S. Constitution is built on some precepts, and one of those is natural law. And natural law to me means law that emanates from a knowledge of a creator God. And I resisted the lockdown orders. I fought against them in Commissioner's Court. After we voted against my vote and one other commissioner against that, as soon as I could, I entered a measure to open all Ellis County businesses there were a couple other counties in the state had done similar things. The governor had made some threats but hadn't followed through. And I knew people were hurting. And I was unable to get a second on that measure. But soon thereafter, with a number of counties that, to me, were almost in a legal rebellion against the governor started easing off on the restrictions. And I think time has shown that most of the measures we were taking were only somewhat effective, if effective at all, at preventing the spread of the virus. And what we were doing is tromping on people's rights to live their lives. And we were causing not just financial hardship, but psychological hardship. And I stand against that. You know, if, God forbid, I were in a nursing home and I couldn't see my loved ones, that's one less reason to want to continue on. And it's an atrocity to me to not make some allowance, even if we had had a different kind of plague, and even if that plague had been susceptible to the measures we were taking, which I think now we have data that says a lot of the measures we were taking were not that effective. But if they were effective, we have to make allowances for human association, companionship, and free speech, which is all of what the First Amendment's about. And we cannot, and I just disagree with this fundamentally, we cannot lock down churches. Churches have a right to govern themselves, and they can make a decision whether to do an online service. My church, for instance, offers online opportunities to this day, but it's for people that are ill with other measures. It's just a common sense thing. We offer online viewing, and a lot of churches do that anyway. Otherwise, we have communion. We've never had, to my knowledge, anybody catch COVID or anything else from communion. I don't know if that's divine intervention. I don't speak for God, but I will say this: I think God is bigger than the virus, and God and a belief in God help to determine our Constitution and the way we view our rights. And I will not back off from defending our rights. I think the Second Amendment is an absolute right for law-abiding people to own firearms sufficient to their own self-defense. And that would include the defense of the country, the state, and the county in a national emergency. But I think you also have a right, should somebody come through your door, you need to have the right to repel them. And that is part of public order. You know, you hear some commentators on some of the major networks make it sound like that's anarchy. No, that is the safety net for public order, is for the citizenry to be armed, for them to have that right.
But one of the things that they're doing is the recording of license plate numbers. Do you see like Fifth Amendment concerns with that?
I do. I haven't explored that in detail, but I'm generally in favor of people being left alone. And I am, you know, my father was a Dallas police officer. I'm very respectful of the police, but at the same time, the Constitution does not exist at anyone's convenience. The Constitution is there to protect us all. And if it fails, like we've seen it at times bend, I won't say it's broken, but at times it's been bent, that is when our society has the most problems and starts not believing in itself. What we saw during the COVID lockdowns and the riots and the social disorder and all that is we saw little anarchies set themselves up. We saw little communities of interest in the Northwest, for instance, where, you know, people were trying to set up their own governments, but they were misguided in how they went about it. They were socialist experiments, and inevitably they failed. Murder rates went up, crime rates went up, and we're still seeing the fallout from that. You know, these mass thefts we're seeing of retail operations in different places, these woke DAs that have been put in place by people that have a lot of money and want to me, orchestrate a major change in American society. What they want to do is ultimately weaken us. And there are many states that do not have the strength of the support of the Second Amendment that Texas does. And so there's not that safety net. We all watched what happened in New York when that gentleman at the bodega was able to turn the knife on the guy and unfortunately had to take his life or it was going to be his. That was controversial. In Texas, in most of Texas, that wouldn't have been controversial. It would have been investigated, certainly. But in New York, it was like controversial that somebody used deadly force to defend their life from somebody bigger, stronger, and armed. And that should never be a controversy, not if we're going to be a free people. Well, number one, we should be one of the 5 watchdogs in the commissioner's court. Every county in the state has 4 county commissioners and a county judge. We should be watchdogs to make sure that we're not over-regulating to the extent that the state of Texas will allow us to do that, because we come under the state of Texas under direct authority, even though we are constitutionally secured elected officials. The state of Texas has a lot to do with what we can do. We have a mandate to protect our folks from over-regulation. We have, and on balance, we have to look out for and have just enough regulation that people are able to enjoy their property and their effects like we learn under the Constitution. The next thing we need to do is we have to look holistically at the county budget and determine, is the county budget fair? And are we doing what we can to keep taxes in line to where we're not a high tax county? And we've been very successful at that in this county. Unfortunately, our efforts are sometimes undermined by appraisals in this county, and where we can come up with a budget and we can come up with a tax rate that the average homeowner will probably not pay any more taxes, or if they do, it will be, $10 a month or so. And I know $10 a month is your $10. It's not mine. But the fact is that we can come up with a budget, even in a year like this when we've had some surprises due to jail staffing issues, and not staffing, but different issues with jail and justice issues. We can do that. At the same time, we have to judge it for the average homeowner. And what we're running into is we're seeing appraisals going crazy because there are not the state limits on appraisals for small businesses that there are for homeowners that have all the exemptions that a homeowner should have. And what happens is we can't account for some of these appraisals when they go up 4-fold in a year. We can't lower the rate enough to affect every small business like we would like to. We can help the average homeowner, and I think we do a better job than that over the long haul. If you look at our record, we've done a good job, and we have done a better job than any other political entity that I'm aware of. But what we can't do is account for these crazy appraisals. And I don't know if that's coming from state pressure on our appraisal board, because the Ellis County Appraisal Board is not Ellis County's. It is a state mandated construct of which we elect one director, and that director is a minority of directors. There are many other directors. We have the weighted voting streak to elect one. Now, it appears that, and I've advocated for this for a long time, that the people themselves will get to elect some people to the appraisal board, and that's going to be interesting.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, but it's needed. It's needed. I mean, what else are we going to do? We have to have some direct influence from the taxpayer on that board.
How would you say, Paul, how does your conservative values affect your decision making on the commission? How has it guided you, your principles? And what would you say has been your number one priority as a commissioner?
Myself a common sense conservative, but I'm a constitutional conservative that understands the part that natural law plays. I think when it comes to county government, we have to apply the Constitution to where it has an effect locally. So my guideline is the roots of the United States of America and the roots of the state of Texas, even going back to the old Republic of Texas. I'm not an advocate for a modern Republic of Texas, but I've read a lot of history, and I definitely believe that you have to understand Texas as its own individual creation, we joined the Union as a republic. We are a very independent bunch, but we still need to observe the U.S. Constitution. So my view is to always look for a way to lower the tax rate, always look for a way to lower the net taxes paid by the average homeowner, always look for a way to defend people's right to enjoy their property and their persons. And that was one reason why I couldn't support the lockdowns. I just couldn't. There's any number of ways they were harmful. And there were any number of ways to me that violated the First Amendment and other parts of the Constitution. And I really think we had something pulled on us. I don't want to sound like a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, but there were people watching our reactions to that. And some of them were very powerful. Now, did they intend for it to happen that way? I think some of it is just taking advantage of a situation. But the fact that that went down as fast as it did at the federal level tells me it had been planned as an alternative for a while. Now, am I saying that COVID itself was spread on purpose? No, I am not. But I'm just saying that we do a lot of thinking in government sometimes that we think past the Constitution. We don't factor in the Constitution. And the people that were doing the contingency planning there had no regard for your constitutional rights. And that's been going on for a while. And it's a shame.
What would you say is the most pressing issue facing the county?
It's the same issues when I first came into office in 2013. And it's a challenge because what we have is we have people that have lived in rural environments most of their life. They enjoy a rural lifestyle. They don't have a lot of expectations of government. They tend to be hardy, self-reliant. They drive the kind of vehicles that, they know how to take, road flooding, bad weather, all kinds of things in stride, whether they're just tolerant or they've done some contingency planning on their own or whatever. And then we have people that have more suburban expectations and expect more services in rural areas than we have done for years. And then now we have people who are moving to the country, some of them from out of state, and they have a lot of capital. They build nice homes. And they have urban expectations of services, which is usually very unrealistic unless they were wanting to be annexed, because our tax rate is well below, often half that of the cities. Plus cities get sales tax, which counties do not. So we are really limited on what we can do. And we have some major expenses coming down the pipe that we're going to have to budget for. We've had a huge increase in our jail health services. And those are mandated by the state, and no one I know of wants someone denied health care just because they're in jail. If they're in jail, they may be innocent. And even if they're guilty, we want to treat people humanely. And because our jail population has been up, and that's beyond the commissioner's control, we just get to write the checks. And the check we're writing right now is 7 figures for health services in the jail. And the number we got the other day was a big surprise, and it's going to impact our budget. And we're going to have to figure out a way, how do we do this? How do we maintain our low rate and deal with these surprises we're getting post-COVID? And go ahead. I'm sorry, Deacon.
Normally when you pass a budget, there are supplementals that come out throughout the year. Did you see a lot of those this last budget?
Well, we're going to be making some changes on ambulance service. We're going to be making some changes. They're going to cost us some money on, as I mentioned, health services for the jail. There are other issues. We've had to pull back on some spending that we wanted to do to serve our citizenry, but we've already seen in the budget how we're not going to be able to do some of the things we wanted to do going forward because we have these other major expenditures that have come up post-COVID. And we have some things that need to be worked out among other public officials to help ease the burden in the jail. And I know the sheriff would appreciate some cooperation, because he has the responsibility for all those prisoners. And some of this goes beyond local. It's supposedly going to get cleared up, in that some of our prisoners that were ready to go off to state facilities, in other words, they've been convicted, were not getting picked up as fast as they used to be picked up. And that is a situation that's going to have to be taken care of. And my understanding is the legislature is working on that one as well. But all these things cost us money. And justice, the budgeting of the sheriff's office, the budgeting of the jail, much of the budgeting of the courts, as a matter of fact, most of it, from JP to district courts, most of that overall budget falls to commissioner's court, and as well as the DA's office. So when you think justice and you think, how do we pay for this? It's the Ellis County budget paying for that. And that is a huge part of our budget. And this year we're having to make adjustments because of basically jail population and other issues. We've had to expand our courts a little bit to deal with the current level.
The budget this year, was there any raises that were included?
Yeah, what we did this year is we decided to take our normal cost of living raise, and we decided to target it at those who have more modest incomes, more modest salaries from the county. So what we will probably have is a flat amount that will mean more for our median, and our average paid employees. So that what you will have is they will get about a 5.8% raise or more, whereas people who make a little bit more money, or some of them are going to get a 2 or 3% raise. Well, last year we passed a big raise for everyone to try to do a catch-up raise post-COVID, because at one point we froze the budget during COVID because we didn't know what to expect. So this year we're going to go back and try to level that out for some of the folks that don't make it quite as much money. Many of them are jail employees. Some of them are some of the lower paid people in the sheriff's office. But we also have a STEP program in the sheriff's office where those with service in one position will benefit because they'll get a little bit more pay for their seniority, in effect. That's how it works.
So one of the things that happened in your tenure is that the county voted on establishing a veteran. For those of you that don't know what a veterans court is, a veteran court, basically a veteran gets in trouble. The DA determines whether their crime qualifies or not. They go through a pretty extensive program where they deal with their issues, drug abuse, etc. And they have to work really hard. And when they're done, if they've met every requirement, they get the record expunged. It's a second chance for people who signed on the dotted line. And it came, thank you, Mr. Perry and the other commissioners and Todd Little for approving that going forward for Ann. So I wanted to thank you publicly for that, because you were part of that process. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want the public to know it only applies to certain offenses. So, if it's horribly violent offender, they're not eligible for the program, but they're screened. And you described it very well, DV. I couldn't describe it any better, but I would add on the front end, there's a screening process.
Commissioner Perry makes a closing statement.
Well, it's hardly necessary, but thank you for the opportunity. My wife and I have shared 41 years together, and I am a loyal person, and I am loyal to this county. I am loyal to certain ideals, and I think I've explained them. I believe in a creator God. I believe Christ died for my sins. And I believe there's that we are in that cosmos, that we are in God's creation. And part of that creation is what I refer to as natural law. And I think the founding fathers, almost to a man, believed in natural law, whether they were Christians or not. And many of them were Christians. And I believe that the founding of the Constitution is based on that. And I think we saw some recommitment to that during the Texas Revolution. I will not violate the Constitution to the best of my knowledge, and I will defend your rights. And that includes the smaller things, tax rates, county regulations. I'll try to make sure they're not onerous and they follow those same precepts and guidelines. They follow the Constitution and natural law. And at the same time, I am determined to make it that even though this county has changed greatly, to where those people who want to responsibly enjoy their property, who want to responsibly enjoy a rural lifestyle, that they get that opportunity. And I would really appreciate the support of those folks who have supported me in the past and some who have hopefully warmed up to me over time. And I would like to serve another term. And I would thank people for their support, their guidance, their prayers. And I just appreciate the opportunity to serve. I'm one of those people that was raised to want to work, to see work as a virtue. And I'm not afraid to work for you. And I'll be there for you.